Hey, what's up? My name is Galactor, and in this video I want to show you how you can make hardstyle mid intros. Now I'm not going to say this is going to be the perfect way to do it or something. This is just one method to create them. And of course it also depends a lot on what you have in your mind, what kind of ideas you have in your mind for your track. But I will go over some very important tips and tricks that are really useful in general for making hardstyle, so make sure you stay until the end of this video. I will be using a quick remix that I did of the track Hero by RAWSTYLE. It's an absolutely amazing track, and when I first heard the pre-drop vocal, I had this rhythm in my mind of creating a build-up that is leading into a mid-intro by using that original vocal. So let's have a listen to it and then dive into the project. And just a quick note, I will be using a rendered version inside FLP just because of CPU reasons. So the first step I took was downloading the original song and then removing the vocal from the instrumental by using a website called vocalremover.org. I really love this website, and the great thing about it is it actually lets you do it for free, and I have to say the quality is pretty good. Let me show you.
We all need a hero, someone heaven sent. We all need a hero.
So as you can hear, I was able to remove it quite clear. It even took the reverb and all those small delays. And even though it's not completely perfect, it's something I can definitely work with for this project. Another important thing that you should know when you start your mid intro, of course, is to know the key and the BPM of your track you're working in. And if you're doing a remix, you can use the same website as I used before for removing the vocal. I will leave a link for that website down below in the description as well, because it is also offering a function to find out the key and the BPM of the original track. So once I had these elements that I wanted, I tried to create that rhythm of the vocal that I was talking about earlier, and then this is what it sounds like without any effects. So yeah, this was just a little bit too boring for the result that I was going for. So I decided to put up some distortion. But before doing that, I built up an EQ with a low cut to get rid of all these unwanted frequencies here. And also a Soothe 2 to remove some vocal harshness, so to get rid of a lot of those resonant frequencies. And then it's going into a Disto FX, and somehow when I'm recording my screen, the GUI always messes up. When loading, it only shows like the plugin for 50%. I don't know why it's doing that, but yeah, I'm just using the limiter preset here on 100%, and that resulted in the fact that the volume at the end of this loop was just way louder, of course, than in the beginning. So I created a automation clip on the gain with a fruity balance to make sure that the audio level here equals the audio level at the beginning, so you don't hear so much change in that. And then the next thing that I did was loading a Pro C2 by FabFilter just to compress everything together. And then over here there's a kickstart with the mix on 50%, and it has an automation clip, so it only comes in at the drop. And then talking about the drop, over there it was still not the sound that I was looking for. It was lacking a little bit of that grittiness. So I pulled up a little Alterboy by Sound Toys, and I used the drive in quantized mode. In general, I really love the sound that the drive gives, but even though I'm not using any of the formant or pitch shifting, I use the quantized mode, because in this mode the plugin will automatically tune the signal to the nearest chromatic semitone, while in the transpose mode you will only affect the signal once you use the pitch or formant shifting function. And then the drive from the Alterboy adds just like an analog tube saturation to the signal, and that really gives that small gritty effect that I was looking for. But like I said, that only comes in at the drop with an automation clip on the mix level. Now on top of that, I've also made an FX synth for the reverb, and I'm using the Valhalla shimmer for that, and then I'm sidechaining the original signal with a Pro C2. If you don't know how to do that, let me quickly show you how I do that. So you go to your main channel where the original signal is going through. In this case, it's my vocal. Then you just left mouse click here on this little arrow down on the mixer channel, an empty mixer channel. Or if you want to be fancy, you can also right mouse click and then route to this track. And then once you're in there, you load up your favorite reverb plugin. You could also do a delay plugin or both, whatever you want. Sometimes I also like to pull up an EQ here to shape the sound a little bit more. For example, if I have a sound with a lot of highs going in here, I reduce the highs from the reverb, so just to make sure it's really not clashing. But the main trick to make sure it's not clashing with the original signal is to sidechain it. Now if you load up the Pro C2, you can go to the settings over here. This is what it will look like, and then you go to processing, and in this should be empty. In the stereo sidechain input, you just right mouse click on there and select your desired input. I should actually choose this one. And then also make sure that this little box is, the round box is highlighted as well. If it's not, then the input signal is still bypassed, and then it's not working. Then you go back to the plugin interface, and you click here on this knob sidechain and make sure you set the mode to external, and then you're all good to go. And then everything should sound like this. And then there's another very important element in the first part of the build-up. Now this is the kick that I'm using in the first drop over here, but then with some effects to make it a little bit more gentle and introduce the sound of the kick in general. I started off by using an EQ with a low cut and then an automation clip on a peak point. The frequency is automated, and if I then play it, it looks like this. This just gives you a lot of control over the drive of your kick, and you just have to try whatever suits your kick and what suits your track. It's a bit of a try on everything, but just play around with it and you can get really nice results with it. Especially if you use some distortion again as well. This time I use a soft tube distort preset on 50%. I have another EQ to shape the sound a little bit more, because with the distortion there came in more lows again, and it didn't really sound good. That was just too messy in general, so I got that away again. A bit of a tonal boost here and some high cut, but it was really too bright in my opinion. Wave shaper to boost the overall volume again a little bit. Then another Valhalla shimmer for the reverb, and this time it's controlled by a Fruity P controller. You can see that here as well if you look at the mix level of the Valhalla shimmer. So this is basically another way of sidechaining the original signal to the reverb. It's just another method of what I just showed with the Pro C2. This time I didn't want to create another FX synth, so I just decided to put it in here. The way you do that is you just right mouse click here on the mix level, you say link to controller. You choose first. You have to load up the Fruity P controller here. Then you choose the Fruity P controller in here. Make sure you select the P control, then peak. And once you did that, all you have to do is go here and click inverted. Make sure remove conflict is unticked, and then you hit accept. And then you can control the amount of reverb with the P controller. And then the last step was another compressor to glue everything together, the kick and the reverb basically. And together with the vocal, I think it's a really nice addition to fill up that build up a little bit better. And then the other elements that I'm using in the first part of the build up are some crashes. These just follow the general rhythm and the downlifter over here. In the second part of the build up, that didn't change much, just a different way of introducing the kick. I now have a filtered version of it. And I used an automation clip on the high cut. Simply because I'm using an automation clip on a pitch here, and at the end of the build-up there were just too many highs. So yeah, it was not so pleasant to listen to, so I wanted to cut those highs away a little bit with the automation clip. And right before the drop there is this kick effects. And this is just a stretched version of the kick that I'm using here in the second part of the mid intro. It's just stretched by the multiplicator knob here, and then it's on the same mixer channel as these kicks with the same automation clip on that peak point. And then you get a sound like that. Another thing that's coming in is this snare roll. With an automation clip on the pitch and the filter cutoff at the right. And then right before the drop, this falling bass. An uplifter together with a screech. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Then there is this automation clip on the master of an Endless Smile, and this just basically makes the mix a little bit more mono, gets rid of some of the lows, adds some reverb and delay, and this just makes sure that the drop hits harder over here. And then right in front of the first drop, I have this little fill. This is of course just one of the crashes that I have. These are some of the toms, a high one, mid, low, and the distorted snare. And the high tom here is reversed. And you get this nice fill, and I just felt that like these tom fills just fit the vibe of the track. I know RAWSTYLE uses them a lot in their tracks, and I just really liked it in this track as well. And then of course the vocal comes in here. So then we get to the first drop of the mid intro. I'm going to start off by the kick, which sounds like this. And I was just looking for a nice dirty kick with a reverse bass feel to it. What I then like to do is go to my arrangement and just add one to create my kicks, so that I don't have to open up another project or something. I can stay inside this project, I can create a kick, and then immediately track into the project, into the playlist, see if it works or not, and then make adjustments according to that. I just think that's a very easy method. It really works for me to create kicks that are suitable for the project I'm working in. I started off with the first punch. Let me do this. Sounds like this. And this was supposed to give a little bit of that laser kick feel and the main tail of the kick. another punch, another one, and a high crunch. So basically this first punch is supposed to give the real body of the punch. The second one gives a little bit more highs, and it was ideal to create a nice reverb tail with. And this last one just adds a little bit more body in general as well. And then the punches together sound like this. And the main tail and the high tail together sounds like this. This one just gives a nicer crunch. If I take this away, it was a little bit too boring. So what I then do is I put them all on separate mixer channels, and I route them through Kickbus. This is what it sounds without the effects. And now with, it just adds a lot more power to the kick. The way I did that was by using an EQ, and I'm creating a tonal boost with this peak point over here. If you're using Pro Q3, you can just create a peak point, adjust the slope a little bit, and down here in the piano roll, you can select your peak point and drag it onto the root note of your key. If you then play around with the settings a little bit, you get like a nice tonal boost that just adds a little bit more power to your kick. This is without it, and while playing the kick, I will bypass it. You can really hear the difference. It really adds some more character to the kick. Second thing I did was using the glue, which is often used as a bus compressor. And I recently started using this one on my kicks, and I love the preset drum and then full parallel high pass. It really adds so much more volume and drive and power to the kick. I did have to turn down the makeup gain a little bit because it was a little bit too loud, but I really like the sound that it gives to my kicks. Then I have this matcher preset, which is created by Frank Paul. And this is an Inflator imitation because I don't have the real Inflator. And I came across his video. I will leave the link for his video down below in the description, because I found this one really, really useful. Because Frank had a look at what is actually going on behind the Inflator, and he found out that it's actually just a bunch of wave shaping happening. Let me pull it up. And he did that with the help of another video, and he also proved his plugin that it's actually really, really similar to the real one, because he used two tracks with the same song. On the first one he put the real Inflator, and on the second one he put his own patcher Inflator, and then he flipped the phase of the second one. So if you have two identical signals and you flip a phase from one, you should get a phenomenon called wave cancellation, and that should equal out both signals so you actually don't hear anything anymore. And he got like an output signal of minus 70 dB, I believe. You can't even hear that, so his patcher plugin is actually really, really similar to the real one, and I find it really, really useful on my kick buses and sometimes on my lead buses, because it adds so much more volume in some cases without actually increasing the peak volume. So this is the kick without it, and with. It just glues it more together and increases the overall volume. And then last thing I did was compressing it because I wanted to glue it all together even more. And then this is the final kick. And I was happy with that, so I dragged it into the playlist. So the next thing I did was doing this with the vocal. And like I said, right now the sidechain and the little Alterboy come in. You get the idea. So what I do is I just got the redrop vocal and I cut it up in small pieces like that, and then I start scrolling through there till I find something good, because I knew I wanted like small chops to place it randomly, about to drop, create a rhythm with it. And so I had to make sure that I found something that sounded good. So what I then do is just loop a part, and if you hover your mouse above the sample and you hold your shift key, then you can use the scroll button from your mouse to scroll through the sample. This, for example, is something that I really like, the tone of this. And I just use this method to find a part of the sample that I really like and that I could possibly use during a drop. I just create a few of those and then place them in a rhythm that I like and see which one fits best. And this is the way I just came up with this. And what I then did is grabbing one of those chops, put more reverb on there, like a ton of reverb, record it inside Edison or inside the playlist here itself, make it unique, and then reverse it. And then you get like this huge reverb thing. Yeah. Sounds like that. And you can use that to fill up the gaps because, yeah, it was too empty for me. Just wanted to make it a little bit more full. And first I played more of these chops, but then it was too busy. And I think this is just a really nice method to fill up the gaps in your drop. What I then did was adding this small screech every second bar to fill up the mix a little bit more. Now, it's just a preset that I made a while ago and it really fits the track in my opinion. If you guys want me to do another tutorial about how to create these kind of screeches, especially in Serum, then just let me know in the comments and I will do that soon as well. The preset, let me show you. Looks like this, and I created an automation clip here on the shape, and this just gives it a little bit more movement here in the second note. It's not much, it just adds a little bit more dynamics to it in my opinion. And then this pitch drop, because inside Serum it already has a pitch drop, like there's an envelope on the master tuning, so like every note has this small pitch drop, but on the second note I just wanted it to be a little bit more. So yeah, I created this automation clip on the pitch. Now there isn't a lot of processing on the Screech, it's just a low cut in EQ, and I boosted some of the highs to make it a bit more bright, compression, and a kickstart for some sidechaining. Then again I created an FX end which has a Valhalla room, and I always like to turn down the pre-delay, set the decay to roughly 3 to 5 seconds depending on what I want, high cut all the way up because I want the sound to be as bright as possible, and then after the reverb plugin, control the sound with an equalizer like this, and then I just play around with the depth and the mix to make sure it sounds nice into the mix. Then I, like I said, an EQ to shape the sound a little bit. I always cut away some of the lows because a reverb always adds a little bit of lows again. And since I boosted the highs in the original signal, I wanted to reduce it here so it's not clashing as much. And then again the same trick with the Pro C2 to sidechain it to the original signal. So the other elements that I used in this part of the drop were the crashes again, like the big one every 4 bars basically, and then the smaller one that follows along with the rhythm of the kick rolls. And the last bar of this 4-bar loop has a FX kicks, which sounds like this. And it's basically just a low cut and an EQ and a peak point, and this peak point is automated on the frequency. And the other automation clip is for the panning of the kick. Now, if you use this trick, make sure to not do it like that, not do it all the way, because if someone listens to your song on a mono system, the signal will get lost a little bit and it's going to sound muddy and yeah, it just won't sound so good. So make sure if you use this trick not to do it all the way. Now the second 4-bar loop is not much different. The vocal chops are still there, the screech is still there, the crashes are still there. The only thing that changed a little bit were the kick rolls, especially here in the end, and they just simply follow the rhythm from the vocal chops over here. And then on the last bar I have the stretched out version. It's just stretched again with the multiplicator knob in here. But if you do that, just make sure you use the original punch, so not the punch from the stretched sample, because otherwise it sounds something like this. And that's pretty shit, you don't want that. So make sure to use the original punch and then paste the tail behind it. If you use that trick, make sure that the waveform over here, wherever you make the transition from the original punch to the tail is going smooth, you know, like you see like this. It follows the original waveform kind of. It's just a small detail, but if you don't do that, it might result in like a small clicky poppy noise, which could be noticeable. So it's just a small thing to pay attention to make it just a little bit more smooth and clear. And then in the next 4-bar loop, I switched up the rhythm of the vocals and the screech. I also took a different vocal sample. I used the same method again, just hover your mouse above it, hold shift, and then scroll through the sample until you find something nice. And then I layered it with the screech so it has the same rhythm. And I switched it up so that it's less boring and it becomes less static after 2 4-bar loops of the same. I also layered it with a hi-hat that follows the same rhythm. And this is also a very good tip in general if you're creating a track or a drop, mid-intro, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you stick to a certain amount of rhythms, preferably like 1, 2, max 3 different rhythms overall, because the listener will both consciously and unconsciously pay attention to these rhythmic changes, and the less and the better the rhythms there are, the more pleasant it will be to listen to, and the more danceable it becomes as well. Listeners can anticipate on what is coming in terms of that rhythm, and therefore it's just more enjoyable if you stick to just a few rhythms. And then you can use these little tricks as layering it with small sounds like hi-hats to emphasize on that a little bit more. And then in the next section, it becomes a little bit more interesting again. I wanted to implement another mid-intro with another kick that hits a little bit harder than the first one, but I also didn't want to take too long to lead into that, so I wanted to keep the listener hooked. So I decided to replace like 1 4-bar loop of the original mid-intro with a build-up into another mid-intro. First thing I did was creating this effect with the original vocal. And this is basically controlled by a deep blue stretch. I think it's a free plugin. I got it some time ago, and you play around with the settings a little bit and you can create very nice vocal build-ups with that. It's just a matter of playing around with your sample, see what fits. Create an automation on the trigger and on the ratio. Those are most, like the ratio is the most important thing. And then I also put a filter on there with the automation and the cutoff frequency, so you have this nice fade out. The next thing, the screeches again. I also placed this tiny little part of the screech in there. It's only very small, but it just fills up the mix a little bit. And I did the same trick with the kick as I did in the first build up over here. It's on the same mixer channel. I just replaced it with the other kick. And the other elements, yeah, it's just the snare roll again over there, the rides, the downlifter, uplifter, and a sweep, and the automation clip on the endless smile. and that's pretty much it for the build up. And then we get to this second part, which is basically a second mid intro. And as I said before, I wanted to have a heavier kick in here. So I use that one. It's from my Raging RAWSTYLE kicks pack. It just has a multiband compressor because I felt that the lows were a little bit too present. It was a bit too much for me, for this track at least. Then I used this inflator patch I was talking about earlier again to increase the overall volume and a little tiny bit of compression. I used the same pre-drop fill as before. Nothing changed there, except for this little pitched punch. That is again on the same rhythm as the tom over here. And I did something different with the vocal this time because I wanted to let the screech be in the front this time. So I just took the last part of the vocal, repeated it, and then an automation clip on the volume, so it has like a nice fade out. I changed the screech to this one. It's again a screech that I made a while ago, and it has the same little thing in a master tune. So you have like this nice pitch drop every note. And what else comes in here is a chord stab. It just plays a simple F sharp minor chord, which is the key of the track. And it's just a very simple preset. I think it's from the Bass Modulators Silent 1 preset bank. And it's even on the same mixer channel as the Screech, so just a nice low cut and a reverb, and that's it. And it's just simply to keep it a little bit more interesting, to fill up the mix a little bit more. Same thing as for the hi-hats as I did in the second part over here. Emphasize on the rhythm, and to fill up the mix and the space a little bit more, this percussion loop. It just adds like a nice little texture in the background. And in the second part, the kicks changes. Oh, I just pitched it down, the tail. So I got the tail from the original kick. I kept the original punch because you don't want to pitch the punch. And I just pitched it down 200 cents or 2 semitones on the E3 generic mode, which is quite common for pitching kicks. And then make sure you have a nice fade in, fade out, so it runs smoothly into each other. And then in the next part, I have the normal kick again, the normal pitch, but it follows the rhythm of the screech and the hi-hat. And together with the snare roll, it gives the listener the feeling that, okay, this drop is coming to an end, and the energy is going down a little bit. And that was my goal for it. In between, I have this kick FX again. It's the same as in the build-up. Just adds a nice little switch up to keep it interesting. And throughout the drop, the crashes again, some of the tom fills, the distorted snares. In the end, the sweep and the ride that follows along with the rhythm of the kick, the hi-hats, and the screech again. And then the last quick thing I want to show you guys is the mastering channel that I used on this. If you've seen my other video, my tutorial about hardstyle mastering, you know that I like to use gain staging, and I love using the normalizer by Hornet for that. This means that I can just produce at a normal volume and mix at a normal volume, but as soon as I start mastering, you just reduce the overall volume basically. You can also just use the fruity balance and then reduce the volume like this and bring it up with later in the mastering chain. It's just something I love to do because when it's a little bit less loud, you can make easier changes like this with the multiband compressor, etc, etc. So that is the second plugin as well. I just created a lot of bands, and then I selected them all, reduced the threshold and the range a little bit, and this just makes sure that you have a bit more of an equal frequency response over all these bands going into the final mastering plugin, which is the Ozone 10. Right before that, I have a Pro Q3 with a low cut at 25 hertz, because everything below here is basically nothing. I can show that to you. Like, there's nothing going on here. We don't need these frequencies. The only thing that can happen is make it a little bit more muddy. And the same goes for the everything above 18,000 hertz. You barely hear something here, and then it can only clash with the proper signals of your mix. So that's why I always like to cut that off. And what I also like to do is create a low cut on 200 hertz, but this one is just on the sides. So you don't have any bass information in your stereo field on the sides, which just makes it a little bit more clean as well. And then the last thing I do is open up an Ozone 10 and just use their automatic mastering basically, and then it creates this whole channel for you with an equalizer, stabilizer, impact, imager, dynamic EQ, another EQ. This one I actually implemented myself with the same low cut at 25 and high cut at 18,000, and the last stage with a maximizer to bring the volume there again. I didn't do so much crazy stuff because, yeah, it was mostly about producing, how to create the mid intro. It's not so much about the mastering of it. If you want to know more about that, you can watch my other tutorial. And yeah, that's also it for this tutorial this time. I hope you liked it. I hope it was somehow useful to you, that you learned something. If you have any questions or general comments or whatsoever, please leave them down below in the comment section. I will read everything. I will respond to everything. And also make sure to check out the links in the description, because there you will find like the video that I mentioned from Frank Paul, for example, for the Inflator pads, where you can download it. And I will also leave a link for you to download the FLP from this project, so you can go through it yourself. And then I hope to see you in the next time.